In this lecture, we'll be discussing about the query store enhancements in SQL Server 2022. But first, let's say a few words about this great feature that was originally shipped with SQL Server 2016. So yes, Query Store was originally shipped with SQL Server 2016. It is used by the database engine for collecting usage and performance data for various SQL Server objects. For example, it can collect usage and performance data for queries, plans, gather runtime statistics, and much more. It is used for identifying performance bottlenecks, so using the information provided by Query Store, you can track performance bottlenecks more easily. And note that until SQL Server version 2019, Query Store was turned off by default. Now, about Query Store in SQL Server 2022, there are many enhancements that make it even more powerful. So let's discuss about these enhancements. So Query Store functionality has been extended in order to also support secondary replicas, just like it supports primary replicas. So in case you have an always-on availability group-based deployment of SQL Server, now you can use Query Store for also supporting the secondary replicas, just like it supports the primary replicas. So this is a significant new enhancement in SQL Server 2022. Another enhancement is that now Query Store in SQL Server 2022 is enabled by default for every new database. In addition to this, note that there are now some very interesting Query Store hints added in this release of SQL Server. So using these Query Store hints, you can shape query execution plans without changing application code. So by using these Query Store hints, you can increase the performance of certain database processes without having to change anything on the application side. And you can use these hints using the option clause. Last but not least, about Query Store hints, note that, of course, you need to have Query Store enabled in order to be able to make use of these hints. Now let's talk more about Query Store hints, and more specifically, let's discuss about the procedure for using these hints. So the procedure for using Query Store hints involves identifying first the query ID in Query Store for which you want to set the hint. Then, by executing the system store procedure sp_query_store set hints, along with passing as parameters the query ID and the hint name, you are able to set the Query Store hint for the specific query. Now let's see some examples of query hints that can be used as Query Store hints. So among other, you can use the keep plan hint, keep fixed plan, max stop, force order, recompile, and other hints. So if you want to see the full list of query hints that can be used as Query Store hints, you can check the below link where you can find all this information in the specific MS Docs article. Now let's see some relevant T-SQL examples of using Query Store hints. So in this first example, we set the Query Store hint for query ID 15. So we execute the system store procedure sp_query_store set hints. We pass as parameter for query ID the value 15. So we are setting this Query Store hint for query ID 15, as well as we pass as parameter the query hint to use in this case, which is the recompile option. So every time query ID 15 will be executed, the recompile option will be used. Now, if we decide at a later stage to remove this Query Store hint, we can use the corresponding system store procedure for doing this task. So by executing the system store procedure sp_query_store clear hints, and by passing as a parameter the query ID, in this case query ID 15, all Query Store hints previously set for query ID 15 are removed. So by using these two system store procedures, you can set and remove Query Store hints for specific queries. Now let's proceed to a live demonstration where we'll be checking out the Query Store enhancements in SQL Server 2022.